Hello my sweets, it's Keisha. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you consider subscribing. Today I'll be showing you how I made these two Kirklands inspired decor pieces using inexpensive items and my Cricut Joy. If you'd like to see how, just keep watching. A list of supplies I used is in the description box below. To begin, I have 4 pieces of foam board cut to 7 inches by 7 inches to create a cube. I'm using painter's tape to help stabilize the pieces in order for me to glue them together. I used my Cool Shot glue gun to secure the pieces on the inside, stopping 1 inch from the top and the bottom. Here I'm showing you that the first piece is glued to the outer edge and the next piece will be glued to the inner edge. And the final piece is glued the same way, as you can see illustrated here. Next, to add some stability and weight, I add a tumbling tower block to the bottom 4 corners of the box. For the top of the box, I'm using a 7x7 piece of foam board. To make it fit inside the box, I trace the inside of the box onto it. I also make a tick mark inside to match it back up later on. Next, I trimmed down the sides with my box cutter and glued it into place. After removing the painter's tape, I went over the edges of the box with fine grit sandpaper to knock down any rough spots. Here I'm showing you the other 2 boxes for the set. One is 5 inches by 5 inches and the other is 9 inches by 9 inches. They're made the same way as the 7 by 7 inch box. And these will nest down nicely for storage. Throughout the remainder of this DIY, I'll only be showing the smallest box. Next, I'll be galvanizing the boxes. The first color I'll start with is Steel by Waverly chalk paint. Using a makeup sponge, I'll randomly pounce the paint all over the box. Full coverage is not necessary, but you want to make sure you are not keeping a constant pattern with the sponge. The next color I'll be using is Galvanized Tin by Anita's all-purpose metallic acrylic paint. Using a new sponge, I'll do the same steps as before. The last color I'm using is Silver by Craft Smart Paint. This technique is very forgiving. You can go back and forth between any of the colors until you are happy with the finish. You just want to be careful not to oversaturate the foam board, as it tends to separate when it gets too wet. Also, you don't have to use the same colors as I do. To achieve the same look with paints you own, all you need is a light, medium, and dark gray. Start with the medium, do the dark next, and then the light. Next, I'll be using Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel to create some rust like the inspiration piece. This time I pinched out little pieces of the makeup sponge to make it irregular. Then the same steps apply. Pounce the color on randomly with a non-consistent pattern. After doing all of the edges of the boxes, I set them aside to completely dry. Then I sealed them all with 2 light coats of this matte finish acrylic sealer. While waiting for them to dry, I cut out the word Joy on my Cricut Joy using permanent smart vinyl in black and dark red. The smart vinyl is really awesome because you don't have to use a mat to cut out your designs. To apply the letters, I first found the center of the boxes and marked them 1/2 inch down on the painter's tape. Then I found the center of the letters and marked them on the transfer tape. Next, I peeled off the backing, lined up my marks, and applied each letter. And this is what we have so far. Next, I'll add a bow to the top using this 2-pack of bows from Dollar Tree. I'll begin by taking off the tails and removing the centers. I decided to keep the staples holding the pieces together. Next, I glued the two pieces together in the center. To cover the staples in the middle, I glued the center piece back on. Next, I glued the tails in an X, making sure it would fit nicely on top of the box. Then I glued the bow and the tails together. I really didn't like that hole in the middle, so I attached the last center piece to cover it. Then I glued the bow on top, and this project is complete. For this project, I'll begin by coloring these plastic DIY disc ornaments that I purchased at Michael's. I used water, a mixing container, school glue, paint colors to match the inspiration piece, and empty cups for draining. I'll begin with True Red by Anita's all-purpose acrylic paint. I start with half a teaspoon of water in my container and add glue and paint. I didn't use exact measurements, but you want the paint mixture to be thick enough to coat the inside of the ornament. Think warm honey. Also, bear in mind that the more paint you use, the more opaque the result once dry. Be sure to stir the mixture thoroughly. Next, I poured the mixture into the bulb. I slowly turned the bulb to completely coat the inside. I'm turning and draining as much paint back into the original mixing container, as I will end up doing 2 bulbs in this color. If you see any air bubbles, you want to get them out before it dries. Once the bulb is done draining, place it into the empty cup to drain further and dry overnight. Then I pour the next bulb and follow the same steps. If you're interested, all of the paint colors and supplies I used are in the description box below. For the sign portion, I have the Beware sign and a piece of foam board from Dollar Tree and wood grain poster board from Michael's. All have been cut to 22 inches long and whatever the width of the Beware sign is. I attached the foam board to the Beware sign using foam and poster board adhesive from Dollar Tree. Next, I cover the edges of the board using masking tape to give it the appearance that it is all one piece. Next, I used Truffle by Waverly chalk paint to paint around the edges of the sign. Once the paint was dry, I applied the poster board on top of the foam board. I placed heavy books on top of it and set it aside to dry. Next, I have a string of lights from Dollar Tree and the toppers for the ornaments. I make the hole slightly larger in the toppers by making little snips in the slit that is already there. I use my needle pliers to make the opening just big enough to slide the light through. Next, I cover 3 of the lights I won't need with black electrical tape. 2 nearest the battery pack and 1 on the opposite end. Now I'm going to show you how easy it is to make the lettering for the ornaments. After opening Cricut's Design Space, select New Project. Then select Text. Here you can see all of the different fonts Cricut has to offer. Next, I'm going to filter down my selection. I'm going to select Cricut Access under Ownership, Single Layer under Type, and go back. I'm going to select Elfie because it's fitting for this project. The text box pops up and I want to use Believe on my ornaments. Next, I select Edit to adjust the height of the lettering to 2.5 inches. Next, I select Action, then Ungroup to make them individual letters. I do this to save on vinyl. Now I'm ready to select Make It. As I said before, with Smart Vinyl, you can cut without a mat, so that's what I'll select. On this screen, you can see the material size to cut. Once I have that ready, I hit Continue. Now I'll choose my accessory as the Joy. Set my material to Smart Vinyl Permanent, then load my tools and materials. Once loaded properly, the Joy checks the link to make sure the proper amount of material has been loaded. Once that is complete, I select Go and cut out my design. Next, I have 16 tumbling tower blocks glued in sets of 2 to use on the back of my sign to accommodate the battery pack from the lights. I'm painting them with Truffle by Waverly chalk paint to blend in with the sides of the sign. Once I get them all painted, I set them aside to dry. Here I have the ornaments lined up with their corresponding lights and letters. After I filmed the design space scene, I did go back and downsize the letters to 2 inches. Now, a disclaimer. This is my second time applying vinyl to a rounded surface. This does take some patience, so if you do this project, give yourself some grace and take your time. That being said, one tip that I know is to start in the middle of the letter and smooth outward. The letter B gave me the most fits to apply, but in the end you barely notice the bumps. If any of you are proficient in this arena, please feel free to leave your tips for all of us in the comments below. Alright, sweets. I'm going to get off the struggle bus now with this letter B, but I do have to say once again, the wrinkles aren't that noticeable. Now that all the letters are applied, it's time to assemble everything. I marked a center point on the board and will work my way from the center outward. I'll also be placing the ornaments on so they kind of look like they just landed, if that makes any sense. Next, I take the toppers that I modified and place them on the lights. Then I used my Cool Shot glue gun and secured the loose bulbs to make sure they don't fall off into the ornament. After that, I took the bulbs, put them down into the ornaments and replaced the toppers. Then I secured each topper onto the ornament with hot glue. Next, I apply the tumbling tower blocks to the corners in L shapes on the back of the sign. Then I secured the battery pack, making sure to place it where I have access to change the battery and the on-off switch. I secured the excess wires to the back using the Cool Shot glue gun, and I ended up adding a twine hanger on the back off camera. I had several of these ornaments left over from the last DIY, so I decided to make little candy ornaments with them. The swirls and the spirals you see now are from a previous project that didn't work out, so I decided to use them here and not let them go to waste. But I'm going to show you how I achieved them in Cricut Design Space. From the New Project screen or a blank canvas, select Image. Next, search Candy. There you'll see all kinds of candies to choose from. I chose the 2 that I liked the most and then pressed Insert. I'm only interested in the spirals and the swirls, so I'm going to remove the parts I don't want. For the green and red candy, select Actions, then select Ungroup. Now I can separate the pieces by sliding one away from the other. Then hit the X on the one you don't want. And that one is done for now. For the next set, I'm still on the action screen, so I select Ungroup for this one. I separate the pieces and X out what I don't want. I re-click on the 2 pieces that are left and select Duplicate so I have 2 sets. Next, I select Hide Contour and click on the lollipop spiral twice to remove both pieces. I click the last set and select Hide Contour. This time I click the swirl to remove it, then click on the lollipop once to remove just the sucker part, leaving the swirl behind. Select the piece you want to resize, then click on Edit. I chose 2.62 for the width, and the height automatically adjusts to the proper ratio. The last step is to change the color of the top swirl so they all cut on the same sheet. After I click the top swirl, I select Cut. I choose the color that matches the other two pieces, and now I'm ready to make it. The pieces that I cut previously are iron-on vinyl. They have been cut from the fabric they were on, and I will be applying them with Mod Podge. I did end up cutting some swirls on permanent smart vinyl in white, and I'll be applying them to the ornaments just by peeling them up and putting them on like stickers. After applying the iron-on swirls with Mod Podge, I decided to sugar some of them with more Mod Podge and glitter. That step is totally optional, but I'm extra and it's for Christmas, so why not? Here's a look at the ornaments on my little tree, as well as another look at the projects from today's video. I can't wait to finish decorating. So tell me, which one was your favorite? If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button and leave me a comment below. If you'd like to see more, subscribe and choose all notifications so you don't miss my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, love, inspire, create. See you next time.